Fuck it, we're live.
Woohoo! Fuck it, we're live.
Hello, it's me.
We're fucked.
I talked right over your joke, as usual, as is tradition. Hello, it's me, Jay, your GM. I use he, them.
Hello, I'm your heir, and I use he, him.
And this is Insight, where we delve into... No, it's something different. It just felt right. You know, when I heard you introduce yourself, it just felt right.
It did. I wondered which of us would start the whole spiel.
Yeah. God, I can still do it from memory, by the way. And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions to retrieve the treasure of wisdom.
Of wisdom.
It's like muscle memory. It's like second, it's riding a bike. It's all second nature.
Riding a bike with your mouth.
So we got a new UA drop. We haven't been doing UA drop like videos before, so I feel like we got a little bit of preamble to go over. Generally speaking, Air, what's vibe check? What's your vibe on the UAs so far, on D&D 24 so far?
I've liked a lot of what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
There were things that I was like, kind of questioning. Mm-hmm. Mostly a lot of like the newer ideas that they were throwing out there, but they've been very receptive to feedback and changing a lot of those things, which has been really nice to see. So yeah, I am cautiously optimistic about the whole thing.
I would say that I'm more optimistic than that. I think generally speaking, they have done all the things I wanted them to do. They have added interesting mechanical complexity to the marshals. They have brought, I guess, further parity between marshal and caster, in my opinion, by giving the marshals a little bit of a boost in Ralph DiMaggio, as well as some nice little options and interesting tactical choices, things like that. A lot of new stuff a lot of new toys for marshals. Not so much new stuff for casters, which is fine because casters were already good. And yeah, I think a lot of the design has been focused around the marshals, which is where probably the design needed to be focused around. And I think we're kind of honing in on some good final classes. I think Fighter's in a good place. I think after this playtest, I honestly thought after the last playtest, Barbarian was in a good place. It's definitely in a good place now. And then Druid, I think after this playtest is in a pretty good place. I haven't done the numbers on it or anything like that, but it feels good to me. Monk. But generally speaking, I would say my opinion is pretty positive. I think D&D 24 is going to be a cleaner, tighter, better game than D&D 5e already was. And I think D&D 5e is a pretty damn good game. So,
yeah, I think the caution for me is mostly about what you were talking about, the martial caster kind of divide being shorn up. And like, definitely the marshals have gotten a lot of love. Definitely some fun new options for them, tactical stuff, little damage boosts here and there. It's really the other side of the coin. I'm really hoping, and they rein in some of the spells.
Yeah,
that spellcasters have been, access to that have been a little problematic, and we're starting to see some of that coming down the pipe.
Yeah, the conjure spells were definitely a big problem spell in the original PHP. And so seeing them get tackled is encouraging. I thought it was encouraging to see counterspell get tackled. That's one I didn't even think they were going to touch. I thought it was a golden cow. And clearly not. It's clearly something that they are willing to go in mess with. So I feel a little bit like everything's on the table at this point.
Well, absolutely. Well, do we want to dive into some of the specifics here?
Yeah, sure. Let's go through it. So Barbarian really didn't get a lot at the lower levels. It's mostly brutal critical that like they clearly seem to think there's some problem with brutal critical.
And it definitely, when you crunch the numbers on it, it as a straight damage boost thing, it really didn't do that. It really didn't deliver. and it wasn't particularly interesting. Just like,
in the video, we both were annoyed by Jeremy Crawford's comment that oh yes, people never really seem to understand that the reckless attack and brutal critical went hand in hand. And it's like, yeah, we did understand that, but
we did the math.
It's like a 7.5% chance of critting instead of a 5% chance of critting. It's really not that big a deal. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, Crawford. Like, it's advantage is good, sure, and advantage on attack, but that's not anything to do with brutal critical. Brutal critical is when you crit, which is 7.5% of the times on 2 attacks per round, because Barbarian is not a frequent attacker like other classes are. Then you're going to do a little bit of extra damage, but because you crit quite infrequently, it's not going to be every round you're getting that big boost, which is kind of what barbs need at the high level, because they're not getting that third attack the fighters are getting. So now we have a Brutal Strike, which is something you can use every round if you want to. It is an option where you can basically trade the advantage from Reckless Attack. And the really elegant thing about the design of it is that this is coming online at around 11th level when your proficiency modifier is getting pretty high. You've got magic weapons, so your to-hit modifier is actually, by this point, pretty big.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's foregoing advantage on one of those at that level 2 attacks. You have to do something. And I really thought they were just going to do like go champion fighter route, expand the crit range in some way, just to make brutal critical more useful. But they were like, no, we'll give you a damage boost, or you want to knock your opponent.
It's
away.
Actually both, isn't it? It's a D10 plus the effect, right?
The target takes an extra D10, and you have one effect. And one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't even read that correctly. Right,
Yeah. So it's extra damage and a nice rider.
At 9th level, forceful blow, hamstring blow, so you can slow people down, you can push them away. And then 13th level gets a little bit better. You can stagger them. You can force that they can't make opportunity attacks, and they have disadvantage on their next saving throw, which is a nice little bit of, I think we were saying earlier, kind of martial caster synergy. Like you can set up your spellcasters to get off that big save or suck ability of theirs by giving disadvantage to their target. And Sundering, you can lower their defenses, which is interesting. Another creature that attacks gets a bonus to their attack roll that's equal to your rage damage bonus. So there's lots of fun options in here, things that I really didn't expect them to add in that make Barbarian way more interesting, kind of 9th level and forward.
Yeah, I mean, this late in the playtest, you really start to feel like they've kind of gotten everything buttoned down. All the new features are a little bit done. But no, they're clearly still willing to play around and introduce some new stuff. So that was pretty exciting. 17th level, you get to pick 2 options whenever you hit, and you get 2 dice of damage. So it caps off pretty well. And then, a couple of other minor tweaks to Barb, but nothing super relevant. There's the World Tree Barbarian, which I didn't really read that much of. I'm not super interested in the World Tree Barbarian, to be perfectly honest.
It's somebody's steez with like the success of like the more Norse mythology, God of War, and like it's definitely got that kind of vibe going to it. Which if that's your thing, great. The only kind of thing I have is like its level 6 feature lets you bring someone who's 30 feet away within 5 feet of you. And then its level 10 feature lets you attack someone up to 10 feet away. Like, just where do I want the bad guy to be? But it's not
somewhere
bad.
Between 10 and 30 feet at any given moment.
Yes, seriously.
It's definitely a very strange subclass. I agree with Treant Monk, who said that class features for marshals should never just be spells. And so the capstone ability of this subclass is teleport or plane shift. And I'm not super interested in getting plane shift as a barbarian. I'd much rather get something. It's
actually not anymore.
Oh, is it not? What is it now?
It's not. It's you get a bonus action teleport up to 60 feet. And then in addition, you can teleport using this feature and bring 6 willing creatures up to 500 feet.
Okay, so now it's a 14th level Misty Step /Dimension Door?
/Dimension Door, yeah.
but like
Kind of,
mass
yeah.
dimension doors, so it's still kind of
Kinda,
good. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's definitely that's better than teleport as a class feature. I mean, one of the things that
plane shift.
marshals are always going to struggle with is mobility, and because they've got to be in melee with an enemy to be effective. And so being able to teleport into position or teleport your allies into a better position is going to be useful at times. So that's an improvement. I like that better.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, plane shift is just very circumstantial. I wouldn't mind if it was still there, but was a kind of a note tagged on at the end. But I'll take it. Barbarians like to get up close, so this helps them do that.
Next up, we got the druid, and the druid really only has one change, which is the wild shape. Now they get temporary HP when they go into their wild shape form, because people were complaining about the lack of defense in the wild shape, the fact that it no longer gave you additional HP like it used to. So now it gives you for the basic druid, it's just like your level, right? Your level in druid hit points.
Yeah. For the base druid, it is up to your level in druid.
So
if you take the circle of the moon, you get more like 3 times druid level or something like that.
So at level 2, that's like what, 2 temp HP when you wild shape. It's not nothing. It's the bare minimum to not be nothing. If you turn the dial of nothing just one notch, this is where you would arrive. It's not nothing, but it's something. So great. I can't really say much more than that about it. They limited the wild shape forms to player's handbook for your first picks, but they included in a design note that there will be more beasts in the player's handbook than there were in the 2014 edition. So you will have more options to pick from, but you will be limited to player's handbooks at level 1 and then or level 2 when you get the feature. And then as you level up, you can pick from other books.
Yeah, they say when choosing a new form, you may look in the monster manual or elsewhere for eligible beasts if the DM permits you to do so. So it's by default, that appendix in the player's handbook is all the forms you can pick, and then it's DM fiat if you can go for other things, which I think is a nice balance between they can't control every splat book that comes out. They especially if they have like third-party stuff that they're putting in the official thing. Like we all know that what is it, the tendril or whatever?
Yeah, the tentacle from the Acquisitions Incorporated book that can hit everything in the room, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Which is great in the adventure it's in, but anywhere else, you're like, what is in the room if it's just outside on a boat? And then we move on to the Moon Druid, which has about 1 billion changes. So circle forms now have a special armor class calculation, which is cool. I mean, they've needed the defensive buff. They have their own HP, temporary HP calculation. It's 3 times level instead of 1 times level. They have circle spells now, which is like a little bonus list of always prepared druid spells that you can cast while in wild shape, right?
Yeah, which are supposed to be thematic to the whole lunar thing, except one of them is dawn.
He says in the video, he says that the sun is still visible, like the sun becomes visible while the moon is still out, and that's the thematics there. And I'm like, that is a stretch, Jeremy Crawford.
Yeah.
You are reaching.
I think someone doesn't know how the moon works.
I like vampiric touch because I guess moons do something with vampires. I don't know.
They like the night. They do like the night.
Yeah.
I think it would be kind of cool to just bite someone as a bear and get some.
I think it's so funny that out of like 7 spells that they tried to theme around moon druids, 2 of them they had to make up, and 2 of them are such a reach. And one of them is Cure Wounds, which has nothing to do. It's just like, boy, y'all did not have enough moon spells, did you? But still, the ability to, so obviously Cure Wounds is taking place of the previous ability of moon druids to spend spell slots to heal themselves.
Spell slot to get a D8, yeah.
So that's what they're clearly going for. Vampiric Touch is doing a similar thing. Yeah. Vampiric Touch is doing a similar thing, allowing them to heal themselves using spell slots, but obviously also do damage. And then Fount of Moonlight is just a straight buff, like it's a buffing spell that allows you to do additional radiant damage. It's a new spell. And it's just like, it seems like a decent spell, a pretty good concentration spell. They've got Moonbeam, which they could already hold concentration on while wild-shaped, but now they can actually cast it while wild-shaped, so that's nice. Star Wisp is a brand new Bard Druid cantrip, invented, I guess, probably to flesh out the list of moon spells here, but also to add a ranged option for druids, apparently, which I think is, it seems like a decent spell. It has like a Fairy Fire Rider, where it exposes invisible creatures, which is...
Yeah, lights them up for about a round so they can't be invisible. Yeah, sure, fine.
I mean, there's not an option like that in the game, so that's just, more options, very cool. And then you get Dawn eventually, which is just like a decent spell, so fine, we'll take it. Anyway... Circle Forms, great. Improved Circle Forms is just like extra damage. Or no, it changes your damage type, right?
Yeah.
And then you can add your Wisdom modifier to your Constitution saving throws, which is very strange. I guess to hold concentration better. Which is, whatever. As a Moon Druid, you're going to be...
We'll get to a lot of the new, Druid Ranger spells we will get to, because all those conjuration spells we mentioned previously have definitely changed to be things that your, wild-shaped Druid might want to have up.
Yeah. And then Moonlight Step, which is like a Misty Step ability, effectively. Lunar Form, which allows you to get a bunch of capstone special boosts, a boost of extra damage. Yeah.
You teleport with one willing creature using your Moonlight Step. Yeah.
So overall,
I like it.
Yeah. Overall, how are we feeling about the Moon Druid?
I like it. I think it's probably the best iteration I've seen of the Moon Druid that they've put out thus far.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's in pretty good shape.
I think that 3 times your level in temporary HP is a pretty nice curve. At 10th level, that's going to be 30 temp HP, which is at 10th level 2 attacks, I guess, at most. It's 1.5 attacks, probably, realistically.
Yeah.
Which is it's still good if you're going to be asking a caster to tank, allowing them to tank for a round and a half longer is still an improvement. And then obviously the ability to trade out your wild shape ACs for an AC that's actually good is huge. I mean, 13 plus wisdom is better armor class than you're probably going to get on a monk. So I'm almost thing, is this going to shake out too strong? Is the Moon Druid going to be getting? I was
wondering that
like a
too.
truck?
They get a damage from their Elemental Fury, which is a core class thing. They get a thing called Brutal Strike, Cunning Strike.
Everything's a strike.
But they get a damage boost there at 7th level, and again at 15. They're getting at 14 in Moon Druid. They're getting an extra 1d10 per every hit. Plus a lot of these, new conjuration spells that require concentration. They're either an aura that does damage, a la Spirit Guardians, or they're an aura that if the enemy's in and you hit them, you do extra damage, a la Spirit Shroud. So there's
Fount of Moonlight.
There's
is
a lot of
2d6.
little things coming together.
I'm curious to see how it shakes out. But I mean, overall, I like the general design ethos. It definitely feels more thematic to a Moon Druid than anything we've had previously. The old Moon Druid, where you just randomly got elemental wild shapes at level 10. Was a little strange. So this is...
And it just had a weird power curve, right? It was you're really good for 4 levels, then you're down, then you're up again at 10, then you're down.
Roller coaster. A roller coaster. Monk. So the Monk is probably the biggest thing that they did here. This is the biggest change of these classes. I mean, the Druid had 1 change, the Barbarian had a couple of changes all related to Brutal Critical, but the Monk has been sort of fundamentally redesigned a bit. Not fully, but there's been a lot. Monk weapons are back, and they've been expanded now. I believe they've added scimitars and hand crossbows to monk options now.
Yeah, any martial weapon with the light property. I think, short sword, scimitar, hand crossbow, I think is exhaustive there.
Yeah. And then you've got so the bonus action attack is now decoupled from the action attack. These are two...
Who never think to do that, Jay?
But that really, it really frees up it gives you a little bit more flexibility as a monk, because as we're going to see at 10th level, it might be more valuable to take your bonus action attack than your main action attack. So there's going to be turns where you're going to want to use disengage as your action so that you can use your bonus action to hit 3 times. So yeah, there's it gives you a little bit more flexibility, gives you a little more room to move. It's like the change that they did in Tasha's, but it's even more permissive than that. Because the change in Tasha's was just if you spent a key, you can still bonus action attack. Now it's just like you can do it just whenever. Dexterous attacks allows you to use your dexterity mod instead of your strength modifier when setting the saving throw DC of grapples and shoves. That's great. I mean, that was an obvious change. We were asking for that when they first announced this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we actually asked for it before they even announced that, like, the monk was coming, and we just learned that strength was now used. It was like, oh, well, obviously the monk's going to use dex for it. And then the monk came out and it didn't use dex for it. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah, we were all kind of like, but what? Yeah, this seems like such an obvious.
Yeah, so that's just, like, should have been always the case. Glad it is now the case. Even if it does kind of create an issue that you were bringing up in the open hand.
We'll get to that with the Sun class, yeah.
Yeah. Weapon mastery has been cut, which is bizarre and unnecessary. I don't know why they've decided that monks should not have nice things.
Because
they gave monks weapons and then took away weapon mastery.
Weapon mastery, yeah. It was like the reason weapon mastery was useless for them is because they lost monk weapons. They added it back and then took away.
Well, there was also that hilarious situation in the previous one where they accidentally cut monks out of all feats. Like all martial feats.
All the martial
so now they
feats,
fixed that, at least, but we've lost weapon mastery. So at what cost? Yeah, so they've cut weapon mastery from monk entirely. They've changed monk's discipline from martial discipline. Who cares? Uncanny metabolism has been moved to 2nd level. It was previously heightened metabolism. I like this ability a lot. It gives you all your discipline points back on just at the start of initiative, and it lets you roll a hit die. So it's just like a little boost of healing, a bunch of extra discipline points, and you're ready to go another round. It just has that good feeling of a brawler, right? Just like slapping themselves on the cheek, psyching them up, and getting it into a next fight. I like it.
It also means that when you don't get that short rest in between, 2 combat encounters, you have this to lean on as a monk, which is, resource management has always been, I think. I mean, there's been a lot of issues with the monk, but this is definitely one of the most, vocally spoken about in the D&D verse. So
yeah, absolutely. Deflect attacks is now replacing deflect missiles, which is really cool. Basically, you can just deflect anything now. If an enemy comes at you with a melee attack, as long as it does slashing, bludgeoning, or piercing damage, you can deflect it. So if an enemy comes at you with a knife, you can do some karate shit, stop their attack from hitting you, and then if you feel like spending a key, you can bop them back as punishment.
If you reduce it down to 0, which the stop hitting yourself aspect of monk is great.
And it's just a more it's like a better uncanny dodge. Like it's just a better uncanny dodge at level 3 as opposed to level 7, which I think is when uncanny dodge comes on. Or no, uncanny dodge is 5. But so I like it. Defensive option for the monk, which lacks a good armor class and lacks a good hit die. Just giving it more defensive options like uncanny metabolism and deflect attacks. It's really helping it to stay in melee for longer. Stunning strikes now deals force damage if the creature succeeds the saving throw. That's great, especially since you can now only use it once per turn. You really want it to do something because you're spending key on it. Yeah, I like this change. This is just a smart change. A little damage buff to balm the wound of them making the saving throw.
It's also a roll of your martial arts die plus your wisdom modifier, which feels a little bit like a little BG3 Baldur's Gate.
Oh yeah, it's
inspiration, as
true.
their open hand monk was able to start adding in like extra martial art plus whiz damage. They get like 6th level.
That's very true. I didn't even catch that. Yeah, that is. There are a couple of things in here that feel a little BG3 inspired. But yeah, heightened discipline is the new level 10 feature, and it is basically just a buff to everything that costs discipline at level 3 from martial arts, or whatever level you get martial arts, it is a buff to basically everything in that. So Step of the Wind gets better, Patient Defense gets better, and Flurry of Blows gets better. Flurry of Blows improves to 3 attacks per... when you spend your 1 key, you now do 3 attacks instead of 2 extra. That's awesome.
If you do Patient Defense, you also get some temporary HP.
Oh,
You
yes.
get the 2 rolls of your martial arts die. And Step of the Wind, you can take
Oh,
someone
yeah,
with
you can choose somebody to take with you. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Very
And
wuxia,
they
right?
also-
Like gliding across the battlefield
Yes.
carrying someone.
Yes.
Feels quite cool. And then level 10, you also get self-restoration, which is the replacement of the ability that just lets you end a condition on you. Now it is specific to, instead of taking an action, it is to the end of your turn. I think that's probably worse.
And I'm not sure about this. I almost want to go back and check right now. But it's Charmed, Frightened, and Poisoned. I feel like it affected more things before.
I thought you could end the stunned condition, but I don't know about that. I'm talking out of my butt now.
You know what? Let's keep talking, and I'll take a look. See.
Sure. Level 13, your deflect attacks improves to any damage type, not just bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. So now you can deflect fireballs, I guess. Fire bolts. It still has to be an
Scorching
attack.
rays,
Yeah.
fire bolts,
You can deflect whatever comes at you. Deflect magic missiles. It's whatever. Discipline Survivor. I think these are like similar features to what they were before. Superior Defense can now be activated at the start of your turn instead of using an action. That's a buff. Versus how it used to work. Now it is just like, hey, I'm turning it on. It's on. You're good to go. Perfect Discipline gives you... Oh, now Perfect Discipline is great because I want them to make this how... They have a bunch of abilities that are like, when you're at 0, gain back X number of resource. And this is so much smarter because now it's like, if you're at 3 or less, gain back X number of resource. Which is just a better design because so often you're spinning yourself down to 0 so that you can trigger your regeneration because it's so specific, right? But now if you end a combat with 2 discipline points, then you just know at the start of your next combat you're going to go up to 4. So you don't have to worry about like spending those last 2 punching a rock or something to try and get down to 0 so that you can actually get the benefit of your feature. And especially for things like sorcery points, I know that they have like the font of power or whatever that lets you regain a number of sorcery points when you're at 0. I think that would be very good for this kind of design where if you have like 3 or less, then gain back up to 4, etc., etc. And then finally, Body and Mind. They were like, fuck it, everyone likes that barbarian capstone, we'll just do that. It's just, it just takes your main abilities, Wiz and Dex, and gives them +4. To a max of 26 now, because obviously everything can go up to 22, so 24 is no longer that special, so things have to go up to 26, which is also just kind of cool that now characters can cap out at 26. That just feels a little fun.
Self-restoration, which used to be Stillness of Mind, this is actually a buff. It was only Charmed and Frightened before, so it's Charmed, Frightened, and Poisoned. No action time, but it is at the end of your turn, which does kind of mean that. I mean, I guess you can do things at some degree of, disadvantage.
Yeah, that's true.
whatnot.
That's true. I was thinking about something like incapacitated or stunned, but those aren't the conditions that this cures, so that doesn't really matter for that. So, yeah, actually, it's probably fine.
Yeah, actually, it's better and good. Hooray!
Yeah, actually, not using an action is good. Open Hand, aka the subclass so bad it's fucking up the whole monk.
This is where this is where weapon masteries live for the monk then, right? Like they live in
Yeah,
this
it's so
subclass.
annoying. I think
Like, and
we have both kind of independently come to the same conclusion here, which is that the way of the open hand is why they took the weapon mastery away from the monk, right?
yeah, I can't think of any other reason because
Yeah.
like the options that are available to you, it's like, you
Because the
know,
big
you can
criticism
paddle them.
everyone had last time, right, was like, well, Way of the Open Hand gives you these abilities that you already get from weapon mastery, but they're better on weapon mastery. So like, Way of the Open Hand doesn't really do anything. That was like the big criticism we
Yeah.
have last time. And so their solution, instead of making Way of the Open Hand good, was to be like, well, fine, we'll take weapon mastery away.
Yeah. Now, if you want to do anything even like that, you have
Yeah.
3 options, and they're all under this one subclass. Like,
Yeah.
like avoid shut down opportunity attacks. And this is the thing I was mentioning to you. There's shoving. You can either do a push, which is knocking an enemy away, or knock them prone, and that's a strength or dexterity saving throw. But because there's saving throws that you're forcing the opponent to make using your class's DC, which is based on wisdom, if I just want to use an unarmed strike to do a normal shove, that's with dexterity. But if I want to do a shove using the push option and open hand technique, my DC is set by wisdom. That is going to get confused at the table constantly.
I definitely can see where it could get confused at the table for sure, because you're switching back and forth. Obviously, the
Yeah.
open hand is almost always superior to the standard grapple and shove,
least you can
because you're like
attack
hitting them
and-
with an attack and you're getting,
Yeah.
yeah. So like generally speaking, probably the monk isn't going to be using the base, but like it's just strange to have 2 DCs for the same thing using different stats, especially when we have an ability specifically changing the stat our DC uses. So the martial arts one should just make it wisdom in the base class too, right? So then it's always
Yeah.
wisdom. That would just make sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder, like, wholeness of body has bonus action, heal yourself for a roll of your martial arts die.
Yeah.
You can do it wisdom number of times. Like it's really not going to be that much here. At least it doesn't use your discipline points anymore. So it's kind of sort of free healing.
Yeah.
But still not going to be a lot. At best, a D12 plus your wisdom at what? Like that's not even until like 17th level. So yeah, I don't know about that one. It used to be like all of your HP, right? It used to be like a huge heal that you got like once a day.
They also nerfed Quivering Palm, which is very strange.
Yeah.
Because they made it like one of your attacks to end it, as opposed to like using your action or whatever to end it at any time. They also like decrease the damage, but I don't know. I just think the open hand is not in a good place still.
No.
And so yeah, I hope it fails. I hope it goes back to playtesting again.
And we get to see the monk thrice one more time. For good
Yeah,
measure.
one more time. I don't know. The monk is in a better place than it has ever been, but the place is still not good.
5E's history. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just needs a third pass, I think. We're close, but like similar to how the barbarian got 3 passes, and on the third pass we got this great new feature that really like makes the barbarian sing at higher levels, perhaps. In the same way, I think that the monk has like they lost weapon mastery. What did they gain that replaces weapon mastery? Like nothing really, right? At the lower levels. I mean, until level 10 you get a third attack, but like at that level 1 to 10, what are you getting that's replacing weapon mastery? Nothing.
Nada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Poor monk. One day.
Yeah, one day we'll get there. And like, you can say like, oh, but they're level 10, they gained an extra attack. Well, yeah, but that just puts them at parity with people like the barbarian who's getting, brutal strikes, getting an extra D10 of damage whenever they want, or the fighter who's getting a whole ass extra third attack per round. Like they get it on their base action, not even their bonus action. So they still have their bonus action to do whatever other junk their subclass says they can do with their bonus action. So yeah, it's very, I don't know. I think the monk can still, I think there's still room in that level 1 to 10 zone for something. I think, it's almost, if only there was like an already existing feature that all the other classes were getting that was really good and that everybody liked, that we could just give to the monk as well. That feature would be really great. Like if they could master some weapons or something. Anyway, so something, spells. Yeah. We've got spells. I mean, we can just hit them real quick here. By and large, the old spells that they revised, healing spells just got a little bit of a buff, like a die at first at cast for all the healing spells, and then Cure Wounds and Healing Word get 2 die on upcast instead of 1. So
yeah, 2d8 and 2d4 respectively. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just like better than they used to be. Quite a bit better. I mean, almost double what they used to be. So good. I know I have plenty of healer players who really struggle with spending their turn casting a healing spell. They really worry about if it's going to be worthwhile because they know that somebody's just going to get hit and they're going to lose all the hit points you give them. And so, yeah, making healing more impactful definitely will take away some of that pain. And especially if we're rebalancing monsters a little bit, then I think it'll probably be fine.
I am interested to see if this moves towards a more proactive healing approach as opposed to kind of the triage model we have now, where it's like, okay, who am I healing wording?
Yeah, right now
to get back up because of where they are in the initiative, so they at least get their action. We're not losing that chunk of action economy. Like, it's very that up and down swinginess has definitely been a criticism of Fighting's combat.
Yeah, it's very much the only time to heal is when somebody's at 0. And then the only hit point that matters is the 1 you get them up to. Yep. So just cast healing at the lowest possible level when they're down, get them up off the ground, buy them an action, and death carousel them for the rest of the battle. So yeah, this might actually be able to deliver enough healing that somebody could stay up for a hit or two and then actually be a part of the combat, and now it's actually worthwhile to proactively heal, as you said. They added 2 new spells, Starry Wisp and Font of Moonlight. We already talked about those when we talked about Druid. And then the big change here is, I guess Power Word Fortify was also added. Up to 6 creatures, you can distribute 120 temporary hit points. It's a 7th level spell. I don't know if that's worth it, honestly. 120 hit points is a lot of hit points. But 7th level spell is a very powerful spell, and generally speaking, it would be like combat defining for the caster who casts it. So I don't know if 120 hit points is combat defining, but it could be. I mean, I could definitely see a situation where, somebody takes a really big bad hit in the first round. You drop 120 points of temporary HP on them, they're maybe better than they started the fight at. Like they're suddenly very well off. Or even a situation where it's quite. I mean, I can imagine many situations where dropping 40 hit points on 3 different targets could be quite good. Just giving everybody a nice little buffer before the battle starts, and helping your front lines stay up longer. I don't know. I think Power Word Fortify is good. I'm just not sure about the math yet. 120, is that the right number? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. So the big change is the conjure spells. Conjure animals, conjure celestial, conjure elemental, conjure fey, conjure minor elemental, conjure woodland beings have all been completely redesigned. And we would be here until tomorrow if we actually talked about each and every change in each and every one of these spells. But by and large, what they have done is they have taken other existing 5e spells as a basis, and they have reflavored, recontextualized those spells for the bard and druid and wizard classes, and
cleric.
Yeah, so they've mostly taken cleric spells and reflavored them for the Bard and Druid and Wizard classes, except for Celestial, which is obviously also a cleric spell. And these, so generally speaking, these are some kind of AoE, an effect, like you summon a certain area that is filled with spirits, and then those spirits have an effect on an area around themselves. So sometimes that's like doing damage when creatures enter the area. Sometimes it's doing damage. You use some sort of action to command it to do damage, like a spiritual weapon. And sometimes it's like centered on you, a radii around you that's just doing damage, a la Spirit Guardians. But obviously available to druids and wizards, who traditionally didn't have access to spirit weapons, spirit guardians, or any spell that was equivalent to them. Overall, I would say, obviously they had to do something to the conjure spells, because they couldn't just be a second version of the summon spells from Tasha's. And they've already For me, the weird choice is adding the summon spells to this book instead of just making the conjure spells the summon spells. Which
is what I thought they
did. That's what I thought. That to me seems like the obvious choice. Just get rid of the summon spells, make the conjure spells summon spells. But I guess they're worried about the backwards compatibility angle, right? If they just gutted the Tasha spells and put them here, but they've taken Tasha's classes and put them in here. So they're already gutting some content from the Tasha's book and putting it in here. They've taken some of the optional rules and put it. It's very, very strange. But because they already told us that they're adding the summoning spells, we knew that they had to do something to conjure spells. Because you can't have the old conjure, the PHB conjure spells. They were bad and not good for the game. And you can't just have them be a second set of summon spells, because there's already Summon Beast. We don't need, two versions of Summon Beast. Yeah. So it was obviously they had to do something. What they have arrived at here is very strange.
It's definitely at first I felt this is Spirit Guardians, this is Spiritual Weapon, this is Spirit Shroud. And I was but I don't mind druids and rangers, and I suppose even wizards, getting some of these options. I don't think a wizard is going to be using them very often, but a melee, wild shaping druid or melee ranger could definitely get some mileage out of these things.
I also just think that there's... Oh, sorry. I also just think that there's a big flavor win in, being able to just plop down a horde of little creatures. I think that there's a flavor win in being able to do that in a sort of mechanically light, consequence-free way. My character is really at tune with nature, so I cast this spell where I'm just surrounded by an army of animals all following me and singing songs and having a gay old time around me. And now you have a spell where you can do that, but at the same time we don't have to track their initiatives and hit points and stuff like that in combat if it breaks out. So I think that there's a flavor win in that regard. But it is definitely not the same as summoning, 15 badgers and having them be your little helpers, It's a very strange middle ground, and I don't envy the position they're in. The conjure spells were almost unplayable as they were in the PHB.
Definitely not table friendly.
Yeah, destructive to play. They were destructive to play. And so I think that they had to be changed. The summon spells were a slam dunk, like a home run. They were just great. The summon spells are just really good. And so, competing with that design would have been tricky regardless. And they've obviously, for whatever reason, made the choice not to just steal that design and rename it. And so, they had no choice but to create a redesign. And what they landed on here is functional. It seems cool. It seems like it's going to give casters new options. A lot of these spells seem pretty good, pretty strong. So yeah, I think like they're gonna see play. I think they're quite good. It's just like a real big. It's a real big shift. It's a real strange shift in the same way that like the new counterspell was a real shift, right? Like they're taking some big swings with the redesigns, which I'm curious to see how they pay off with the community, how they land with the community. I was happy to see that there was not a redesign of counterspell in this document. Like that they clearly just ignored the community reaction to counterspell. Which I'm happy about. I don't want them to go back to the old counterspell. I like the new counterspell. But yeah, I can't imagine the feedback on counterspell was overwhelmingly positive. So the fact that it's not like redesigned here, yeah, I don't know. I'm grateful. And I think that these conjure spells similarly, like they're a big diversion, but they're an interesting diversion and probably a necessary diversion. Like if we're not going to just make the conjure spells the summon spells, then this is the next best thing, I guess. And
yeah,
it's
going to it took me a while to wrap my head around them because it felt like kind of like
it's very out of left field. It's very strange.
Yeah, it is because it's not conjuration in that I make a thing that adds to action economy and it's just another little guy. It is a lot of areas of effect, a lot of kind of auras, and it will be interesting to see how they play. I definitely want to play test them. I definitely like this is the most I've wanted to play a druid ever. So I feel that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think that they have definitely added like. I feel like the Druid spell list has always kind of suffered in the mid to high levels too. So making these conjuration spells really good solid picks at level 5, level 6, level 4, it is going to beef up the Druid spell list. Like it's going to help the Druid spell list have bangers at every level. Spiritual Weapon and Spirit Guardian are good spells. And giving those spells to new classes with like slightly different riders, slightly different flavor, they're gonna be good. Like they're still good spells. They're good spells, Bront.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're good spells, Bront. And I think that really covers it. Like a lot of the other things around the weapon masteries and the rules glossary haven't really changed. So I think that's everything coming out of this UA.
Yeah, I overall I would say that this UA feels like another step towards being done. Like it really feels like we're getting very close to being like having a complete game here. I'd love to see a third pass on Monk. That's basically the only thing out of this playtest I think I'm really going to have much critical feedback of. The Druid seems fine. The Barbarian seems fine. The spell changes all seem at least interesting to me.
And this
was Insight Check.